see you, Colleen. Just a message, tell and don't forget to spread the word. Don't forget to share the link everywhere. No. No, no. Let's continue. This event Cortlandt Manor is also a museum area. And the land is here. This is awesome. Audience, I will see them on the way out. Therefore, we're not worried about it. We'll not miss out. Now we're walking through the individual lantern. Good evening. This means we can't help. Yes, but we're going to walk. This is not just a display. This is a special Halloween event. It is annual and it will take place this year when Cortlandt Manor in the village of Cortlandt Hudson in Westchester County, 40 miles north from New York City. That's the atmosphere. Spooky. Each pumpkin own feet. Yes, they so each pumpkin is an individual.
little more stuff started going.
I was in the house. And really the most horrendous event of my entire life.
Whoa.
There's no part of the house that's not active, Jason.
Where's the not just back alley? You felt like something just touched back alley. You're touching here? What? I heard something. I don't have an explanation for how that could be possible. That is probably one of the craziest things we've had happen.
Yeah, I cannot explain what the hell is going on. I keep getting kicked out. My mic keeps getting turned off. I cannot explain what the hell is going on. I keep getting kicked out. My mic keeps getting turned off. No, I'm used to. There it goes again. I'm used to the shit freezing up and trying to figure it out that way. Because at my house, it does that. But I am in my house. My sister-in-law has this Elon Musk Wi-Fi shit, and she swears by it. It's supposed to run faster. It's supposed to be able to stream longer, and I have nothing but more issues with it here than I do at my house. Now, I don't know if it's my laptop that just isn't strong enough for the Wi-Fi. I don't know. But this is kind of ridiculous. Like, I can't, if it's not just pictures, I can't show. Like, this is starting to really piss me off. No, I don't think the internet's broke. I think it's Elon Musk. We all, I've been saying for a long time we don't need to trust that motherfucker. Yeah. No, there really is. One of my friends in my house has it, and then my sister-in-law and my brother have it. It's like $700 for the whole setup, and then it's like $150 at the most per month. And then both of them bougie asses, they can keep this shit. Now, like I said, it was storming all day today, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it or what, but I know there's a cell tower not too far from us, so I can see the light off of the top of it right here. I don't know. It's just crazy. There, let's see. Let it sit for a minute. Let's see if it works now.
Adventure for our paranormal quest, we have traveled to Burrillville, Rhode Island. And this farmhouse that sits behind me is almost 300 years old. This house has gone many names over the years. Harrisville Farm, the Arnold Estate, but now it is known for the violent haunting that occurred inside this house that inspired the famous Hollywood film The Conjuring. The Perron family lived in this house, and they experienced paranormal activity, some extreme and violent. If the haunted portrayed in that movie is accurate, and if we can have paranormal experiences that correlate with the Perron family and many families that live inside this home.
It is a couple nights away from our investigation. Now, I'm about to speak to the best source of information from history.
Not a thing discovering. My shit ain't work. Elon Musk sucks. His internet, dude. Like, I'm at, my sister-in-law's house. I don't normally have this much issues, but it's kicking me out, turning my mic off. Everything is skipping 10 times worse. Ugh. It's pissing me off. I don't know what to fucking do. Thing I try to share, and it's doing the same shit. Fuck. We need a petition against any kind of internet in North Carolina. Yeah, we did get to see some cool pumpkins. I mean, I could put that back on, and without the excuse me, without the sound, and we could just watch the pumpkins if you want to do that. I don't know who's in here that'll do that. Mama Bear's not in here. Everybody left. There was like 12 people in here, but because it kept skipping, nobody wanted to stay, and I don't blame them. Y'all just gotta let me know what to do. Yeah. It's gonna be a long night. Hell, it's gonna be even longer tomorrow because I gotta watch the girls till at least 1 or 2. And I really don't know what to do because I was only supposed to have one, not both. So now I don't know what the fuck to do. There ain't shit to do on Sundays around here. Everything cool was today. I don't know, Amy. Because like I said, watching it from my side, it's working perfect. But when I put it on my phone, I see what you guys are seeing. So it drives me nuts. Look, over an hour trying to get something to play. This is BS, man. I went to link where you got it. It was smooth. Alright, I forgot about the eclipse. It could have something to do with that. I couldn't see it either. Tell him. Hey, y'all, there's their ghost hunters right there. Right there. See him? That's Jason. He's the original ghost hunters. Good try. Dave Tango's still with them. He was the one that was right behind Jay. Yes, he's still with him.
Find Days USA.
Ideas?
You can pray for the dead. But the dead will prey on you. And the dead will pray for you. You can pray for the dead. But the dead will prey on you.
No, I'm here too.
And then you can walk up.
Oh, okay. I think. Okay.
Airflow rollers is here to help you and your loved ones. They can size like protective underwear and biodegradable pad.
Well, that is just shitty. Like, nothing I do tonight is going to work. So I don't know. What do you want to do? Sit here and chat. We could say, I wish I could do commentary on a couple of videos. I would love to do that right now. But it won't do no good because y'all won't be able to hear it. Oh, no, they don't do that down here. You're allowed the American flag and I guess whatever your heritage is, but it can't be like a humongous flag. Like it has to be one that can be hanging off your house type one. But it can't be anything that people deem racist. Because if there's a vote and they vote for you to take it down and it's a unanimous vote, you got to take it down regardless. Yeah, tell you a ghost story. All right, let me Google one. Because, like, I am not that, all right, so there's a story called The Little Hands, The Phantom Patient, the Impish Ghost, The Eerie Attic, The Boy with No Eyes, The Red Lady of Huntingdon College, Jesus. The Ashley Street Ghost, The Ghost of Frederickson, The Ghost Who Came to Play, The Lost Roanoke, Princess in the Tower, Ghost of the Hangman. Yep, that's it. There's some ghost stories. Let's read The Ghost Who Came to Play. How about that? All right. The Ghost Who Came to Play. This is a true ghost story. Might strike you as more awe than eek, but only until you consider that we really have no idea what our four-legged friends can see that we cannot, including the scariest of scary stories. Can dogs see ghosts? Well, there are plenty of dog experts out there, including veterinarians, who will attest to the fact. Got shit popping up. Hold on. Who will attest to the fact that there's lots of documentation that could support the notion that dogs can sense paranormal activity, as Jesus Armandi, DVM, a senior veterinarian for Chewy, put it. And then there's the fact that this story came to Reader's Digest directly from a well-known psychic medium, Christy Robinette, who used her ghost whispering skills to help detectives solve confounding cases. Marlene settled into her side of the bed as she patted Jack's pillow beside her. A year had gone by, but Marlene was still adjusting to the widowhood. Maybe it was crazy to think that after 40 years of marriage she would ever adjust. Elmer, the golden retriever, seemed to understand this from the very first. That cold, moonless night when Marlene returned home alone from the hospital, Elmer did something he'd never done before. He jumped into Jack's side of the bed and laid his head on his pillow. Jack would never have allowed that. But Marlene didn't shoo him off. Instead, she lay down beside Elmer and let the peaceful sound of his snoring lull her to sleep. The next night was the same, and the night after that. Over the past year, it had grown into comfort and routine, but not tonight. Tonight was the first time Elmer had left Marlene alone in bed since Jack's passing. But hearing nails clicking on the wood floor downstairs, Marlene recognized the sound of Elmer's requesting outsies. With a sigh, Marlena made her way down the stairs to the foyer. But Elmer wasn't pacing in front of the big oak door. Rather, he was dancing and wagging and wiggling and bowing, just like he used to when Jack would come home from work. To Marlene, it felt as if Jack had just come home. Who is known for her... Oh. Where did I go? Jack had just come home. Okay, that was the end of the story. Okay, that wasn't really a story, now was it? Wasn't it? Ashley Street Ghost. Wait a minute. All right, the Red Lady of Huntington Dunn College. I cannot say that word to save my life. Here's the story that dates back to 1910, but almost any student at this college in Montgomery, Alabama, should recognize it. That's because the events led up to it. are said to have actually happened as the story goes. In 1910, a young woman who was new to the school was known for her love of the color red. Sadly, she was also known for being strange and a loner. As the first term got underway, the young woman grew increasingly isolated. Eventually, she took her life by slashing her own wrists. Her body was discovered in a red gown drenched in blood. From then on, students, faculty have reported sightings of a young woman dressed in all red. Campus, the figure dwelling in isolation is often cited as a reminder of the importance of being kind to one's peers. Huntington College is just one of many haunted colleges in America, each with its own ghost stories. The next true tale comes from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The haunting happened in 1972 as a party hosted by University of Michigan's living on Ashley Street. A 15-year-old girl who probably had no business being there in the first place suddenly strange, bone-chilling cold, according to Michigan Daily. In an attempt to warm up, she went upstairs because the heat rises, we guess. That's when things really start to go awry. One of the walls of the house started moving, and the black shadow approached the girl. Meanwhile, downstairs, posters were spontaneously popping off the walls and falling onto a growing pile on the floor. The girl wandered back downstairs where she found herself saying these strange words: "The drugs and addiction were my fault, and I accept the responsibility for that. But I was not that way deep down inside. I want to apologize to everyone involved for what I have done." What made those words even stranger was that the girl did did not do no drugs, let alone have an addiction. Her words didn't seem all that strange to the students who lived in the house, though. Before they moved in, the house had been inhabited by a man with a very serious addiction. The reason he no longer lived there, he had died of heroin overdose. Has the ghost of Ashley Street made any more appearances? That remain a mystery, worthy of the most memorable Horror stories. The Ghost of Franklin Jordan. Oh, Frederick Jordan. I'm sorry, not Franklin. This real life ghost story concerns a man named Frederick Jordan who held one of the most lonely and desolated jobs in existence. Jordan was the lighthouse keeper for Penfield Reef Lighthouse off the coast of Fairfield, Connecticut. Lord have mercy, can we say tongue tied tonight? Built in 1874, the lighthouse was primarily a way of warning ships of treacherous hidden reef, responsible for more than its fair share of harbor accidents. In 1916, Frederick Jordan was the head lighthouse keeper. Tragically, he drowned in a boating accident just before Christmas of that year. When he was caught in a gale while rowing home to see his family. The fuck? Caught in a gale? I might need to Google that because I don't know what that means. Ever since then, lightning and equipment malfunctions in the lighthouse have been blamed on Jordan's spiritual presence. But even more chilling is that keepers of the Reef Lighthouse often find the lighthouse logbook open to the day Jordan died. And locals have recounted witnessing an unidentifiable figure appearing on the water to help stray boats find their way to safety near the reef. Ooh, I got chills on that one. Hey everybody. I did not do no damn acid. Probably need it right now. And discovered, didn't think we were allowed to say spooky or spooky. I don't give a fuck. I am not going to stop saying spooky. That goes with Halloween. They can kiss my damn ass. And yeah, I'm not monetized, so they can kiss my ass. Anyway, even if I was monetized, it doesn't matter. Where did my lighter go? I lost my lighter. Damn it. Where did my lighter go? Did I drop it? Please don't tell me I dropped it. I don't want to go down. The goats are going to eat me. I got to stay away from the damn goats. Where the hell did my fucking lighter go? No, it's not in there. Oh, it's in my damn pocket. Then. Alright, so the next one. The Ghost Who Came Play. Oh no, we already read that one. Let's go back. Boy with what? The Boy with No Eyes. There you go. Here we go. This one's for you, Discovering. One night when I was 10, I was woken up by my bedroom door opening, followed by someone sitting on my bed. K. Mendo for recalls of a childhood, the very present ghostly aspiration. I felt my leg grazed and the bed sunk under a person's weight. It's just Mom, I thought, and I opened my eyes. It was not my mom. I found an eyeless boy. He had black, empty sockets. About my age, sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand, and in his hand was a little box. I was startled, but I reached out. He pulled back. I reached again, and he said, "Give it." Then I blinked, and when I reopened my eyes, he was gone. But I could still see the imprint from where he sat on my bed. Fast forward 5 years. My girlfriend came over to do homework. After she finished, she took a nap while she waited for her parents. When they arrived, I tried waking her up. She opened her eyes suddenly, looking up at a corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there and went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to a full consciousness, and I explained what she did. She looked haunted. Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there, in a Spider-Man pose, staring at me. I freaked out and told her my story about the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years. I was with the same girlfriend, and we had a 2-year-old. We were living in my parents' house in my old room. My daughter started waking up at the same time every night, and she talked. After a while, I noticed she had almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her once whom she was talking to, and she said, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and looking." I lost connection. Oh, this one's a long one. The Eerie Attic. Here, let me go inside before I read any more. No, I didn't mute myself. I had to go back and look at mute myself. Ooh. I gotta be careful. I'm wearing my brother-in-law's shoes, and they're like 3 sizes too big. Maybe 4 or 5 sizes too big. Having issues walking in them. Okay. Holy crap. Put my coffee down. Oh. I don't know. It kind of freaks me out looking out their back windows, man. Because it's all like overgrown fields. You know, it just feels like people are watching you through those. I hate this house because there's so many fucking windows. Oh, God. No, I don't even think that's her last name, dude. I think that's just a... Anything to do with her, I really don't want nothing to do with. Alright, let's see if I can find any good ghost stories. No, that's not it. Why don't we go to Reddit? Reddit has some good stories. Oh, wait a minute. I know what we could do. Hold on. How? How do I Google Podcasts? Oh my God, I'm having a hard time breathing. Oh. 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 Come on, open, dummy.
SUV can be.
All right, here we go. I got one for y'all. Let me know in the chat if you can hear this, please.
Introducing the Polestar 3. Designed to go farther with up to 300 miles of range. Designed to protect with advanced safety systems. designed to look and sound like nothing else on the road. Polestar 3, the SUV for the electric age. To learn more and design yours today, visit polestar.com.
Instacart helps you get beer and wine delivered in as fast as an hour. So, whether you need to fill the cooler for tailgate season, fill your glass for Pinot by the fire season, you can save time by getting fall sips delivered in just a few clicks. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Must be 21 or over for alcohol delivery where available. Instacart. Add life to cart. This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
I looked down there and nothing moved or spoke or came forward, and I freaked the fuck out.
I then locked the bedroom door. I sat there with my taser out and hit the panic button on the phone app.
You could hear the fear in his voice as he turned to face us. Then we all saw it. A misty figure formed with the surrounding fog in the shape of a human just behind the candle.
From Disturbed Media, join your host, Chad, for true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, and unexplainable events. This is Disturbed.
Welcome back in, everyone, and thanks for joining me. This week, I'm bringing you 4 true tales that will frighten and disturb. So sit back and listen close as we dive into the horror. We open the show hearing from Reddit user Scare Country, featuring voice work by John Patnode, and we're on the list to be the next victim.
Over 4 years ago, I went to work at a warehouse in the small town that I'm from. I decided to leave after my health started to get worse physically, and I was diagnosed with a panic disorder and severe anxiety after the situation that I'm about to tell you. This changed the way that I developed friendships after that job, that's for certain. So I started this job on April Fool's Day of 2018, which was odd to me. And I had no kind of high expectation of the job. All I wanted to do was my job, get paid, and go home, as I had 2 children at home and many things that I could work on there. The job wasn't hard, and it made pretty good money for all the duties considered, so I really couldn't complain. I worked second shift for about 5 months, and then I went to day shift. While working on the second shift, I kept to myself mostly until one day, I met someone from one of the other lines after we struck up a conversation about gaming. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call him JF. Well, JF was a pretty good guy, and we had a lot of things in common. I went home that night, and he popped up as a suggested friend on Facebook. Again, another oddity, so I decided to add him. When I did, we started talking more at work until he suggested that we should hang out, so we did hang out. Pretty frequently. We were friends for a month at this point, and one day, he decided that he was going to introduce me to his partner. She seemed decent at first, super nice. Didn't seem to be a judgmental type, so I was cool with her. From then on, I would hang out with him when my kids were spending time with his mother. One time, we were talking at a restaurant, and he started to vent to me. Dude, she's such a bitch sometimes. The other day, I forgot to take the trash out, and she threatened to stab me if I didn't. I've never been in a relationship where someone's threatened me, but she's got good intentions, dude. When he said that to me, I was concerned, but of course, we had only been friends for a month, so I thought that maybe he was being morbid jokingly, so I chuckled at him. He gave me a pretty serious look and said, "I'm not joking. She really did." That concerned me. Fast forward about 8 months. They're still together, and we all hang out pretty regularly, forgetting the things he told me then. One day, we were all talking, and he seemed a little off that day, so I asked him what was wrong in front of her. He flashed a smirk and said, "Nothing, dude. I'm just a little tired." He didn't have his eyes on me, though, He had them on her when I asked that. When we went to work the next day, I asked him again, "Do you promise to keep this between us?" "Of course," I agreed. He said that he was breaking up with her, and she went a little crazy. He said that she grabbed her gun and pointed it at him and said, "If I can't have you, then no one will." He said that he defused the situation and is trying to look for a way out. Not really knowing what to say, I just said, "You'll figure it out, man. If you need somewhere to go, then you can come stay with me until you get her out of the house." Fast forward to another year. He finally decided to leave her. When he did, she flipped out again. This time, he told her over text. She said that she was going to find him and kill him, and he was actually having a vacation day, so he sent me a text that said, "Let me know if she comes over to work looking for me." That struck me as odd because I had no idea of the situation that was unfolding. She actually did come to our job, and she asked me where he was, and I said, "I have no idea. I thought he was with you and you guys went out of town or something." All she did was roll up her window and drive off. I called him and told him that she came by, and he called the police about it. They'd found her up the road with a loaded gun in her car. 2 months later, he decided to talk to her again, and when he did, he had something to tell me. When he called me, he asked if I had seen her around, and I hadn't. He said, "I would take some vacation days if I were you." Dumbfounded, I asked him why. He said to me, "Because she's out of jail, and her cousins are in town trying to find the people she has personal vendettas with. You're one of them." At that point, I was terrified. I grabbed my kids and went out of town. Took 2 weeks off of work. Come to find out, that next day, her and her cousins went to the next town over and shot 3 people in an apartment and killed them. I got the news about it the day after it happened. The reason why he knew that they were coming after me is because they made a Facebook Messenger group that he was included in and sent a list of names. Everyone regarded it as spam and decided to disregard the message, but it was. 3 of the names on that list were the people that they shot. The 4th name on that list was mine. After they found the evidence and he decided to go public about the group and screenshots that he had, they were all charged with first-degree murder. From then on, I was very careful about who I would stick my neck out for because even though he knew the context of that list and her intentions, he decided to not inform anyone else on it. Needless to say, we aren't friends anymore, and I dodged a bullet. Literally. Stay safe, y'all.
You're listening to Disturbed from Disturbed Media.
Next up, we check in with an anonymous Reddit user, featuring voice work by Sarah Thomas. And we have a creepy encounter while babysitting.
This is something that happened this past Friday while I was babysitting. For a little bit of context, I'm 21, female, a college student, and have been babysitting since I was 14. I'm not an expert on literally anything. However, over the years, I have learned caution and resilience. At age 15, I took babysitting classes at our youth center, as well as a female self-defense course. So, I babysit at least once a month for this one family. I like them because they pay me more than my usual hourly rate, they have a big house with internet that I can use to do homework, and the 2 kids are surprisingly well-behaved and compliant. So the 2 parents have like a monthly ritual of going out around 5 p.m. and returning a little after 2 a.m. I'm always offered to sleep in the guest room and stay until morning. I usually just stay awake and abuse their satellite TV and then leave when they come back. The house is in a nice neighborhood without a whole lot of neighbors. Very quiet. Also, their house is armed with an alarm system that I have the code to and can arm and disarm it through my phone. That'll be relevant in a little while. So I always take the kids for pizza at this place that paid. I do this so they tire themselves out and go to bed early. Plus, the little girl that I babysit is also on a mission to win a family of stuffed animals from the prize store. So I'd be the world's worst babysitter if I didn't guide her in the pursuit. And if anyone may be wondering, for whatever reason, after Friday night, she only needs the daddy stuffed animal before her collection is complete. Go girl! I was sitting at a table and watching them play in a ball pit, while also texting on my phone. This couple came over and sat at the same table as me. It was a long table with parents scattered here and there, so this wasn't alarming. The couple looked normal enough. Both were probably in their mid-20s, possibly a little older. They talked to each other, but then the guy asked me, "Are you the one babysitting Dr. So-and-so's kids?" So the parents of these children are both doctors, and the specific region that we live in, this would be common enough information. But I still chose to answer their question with an irrelevant statement. "I wonder what they used to make the pizza here." I know. I'm a master of deception. I deserve an Oscar for my performance. However, they seem to see right through my clever ruse. They started making weird comments. They talked about the kids' parents. They commented on her and how they wondered if she would look as pretty as their mom. Okay, my dudes, I don't know if that was intended to be creepy, but I'm just going to be safe that it was. Then the woman says to me, and I quote, "Do they really let you dress like that while watching their kids?" She motioned with her eyes towards my t-shirt, which was admittedly a little tight, though aside from a little bit of a bosom crack, not revealing. I have a thin frame and a large chest. It's 90 degrees in my region of the US right now, so it's not like I can wear a hoodie. And my tits have a Crips and Bloods type relationship with any kind of shirt that has buttons. I saw that as my cue to go and get the kiddos and bring them to get their prizes so that we could bounce. After some very thought-provoking and philosophical debating, they both got their prizes and we headed back over to the house. So, fast forward a few hours. Both kids were bathed and put to sleep. I delivered a heartwarming rendition of Goodnight Moon and read a very spooky chapter of The Werewolf of Fever Swamp and tucked them into dreamland. It was around 9 p.m. I was caught up on homework and was just watching TV when I heard some movement on the porch. I didn't think much of it at first, but the doorknob started rattling violently. I initially started moving towards the front door to see who it was, but miraculously I remembered that it was late at night. I was home alone with 2 kids, and I very much wanted to live. I turned around to grab my purse, which is where I keep my taser. As I'm moving, the back door starts rattling as well, and was accompanied by some banging noises. That's when I remembered that I hadn't enabled the alarm system after returning. Now, if this was a horror movie scenario, of course the alarm wouldn't have worked, and the intruders would have made their way inside. I hate to disappoint you if you were expecting something more exciting, but I enabled it again, quite easily, with no incident. I ran upstairs and grabbed the 2 kids. I put them in their parents' room in the walk-in closet. I still hate that I scared them. When I gathered them up, I gave no context as to what was going on. I didn't want to tell them that someone was trying to break into the house, but in the process, the fear of not knowing seemed to be worse. I instructed them to stay in there and stay quiet, and only to open the door if they hear me talking to them. I then locked the bedroom door, which is the only door on the upstairs floor that locks. I sat there with my taser out and hit the panic button on the phone app. Several minutes went by. Then I got the notification through the app that the alarm system was disabled. I planned on calling 911, even though the panic button already took care of that, but I found it more beneficial to arm it back. Then it disarmed again, so I armed it again. By this time, I could hear what sounded like 2 sets walking up the stairs. Good job, girl. You locked yourself inside with 2 potential assailants. I was holding it together for the sake of the kids, but not too deep inside, I was scared to death. When I heard the footsteps get near the door and saw the knob twisting, I took a deep breath and pulled the trigger on my taser, just to let them know that I was armed, though it realistically wouldn't do much good. I informed them through the door that the alarm was triggered and police were on their way. Thankfully, I was greeted by a familiar voice. "My name? It's Dr. His name. You're safe." I opened the door and ran into their arms and started sobbing. I hadn't realized truly until it was over just how scared I really was. The kids came out, without me giving them the okay, but their parents were there, so I'll let it slide. When I enabled the alarm on my phone, they both got the notification from the place they were at. With the app, you have the option to view the porch cameras as well. When they got the notification that the panic button was activated, they saw through the camera that there were people on each side of the house. One man, one woman. When the alarm kept disarming, that was them trying to get into the house. Police reports were filed by them, and I gave a statement mentioning the two earlier that day, even though there was really evidence that would directly point to them. Camera footage didn't give any positive face IDs either. I was scared. I'm getting over it now. I'm just grateful that the couple that I was babysitting for were close enough to make it to me. I hate to say it, but I find response time to be terrible. I'm currently back in my own apartment an hour away. I checked in once to see how the kids were doing, and they're holding up fine. I'm just glad they had proper protection in their home, and that this didn't end up to be any worse. I'm Tanya Eby, and this is Disturbed.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever find that just as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly gets in the way? This is something I struggle with a lot. My mind just can't shut off as it recaps the day's events. Well, it turns out a great way these racing thoughts go away is to talk them through. This is just one of the many benefits of therapy. And it's not just for people who've experienced major trauma. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back, so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. Now, as a listener of Disturbed, maybe you've heard a story or two on this very podcast that deeply troubled you in a profound way. I've had a few listeners write in about this very thing happening to them. If there's something weighing heavily on you, BetterHelp is there so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. BetterHelp gives you the added benefit of being entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist, and if that one doesn't work out for you, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DTHS today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/DTHS. Using our link helps support Disturbed.
This podcast is brought to you by AT&T Fiber with Wi-Fi. Whether you're into watching horror movies from your basement, watching sports from your backyard, or watching crappy reality shows from inside your car that's parked all the way in the driveway so no one in your family touches you, AT&T Fiber with Wi-Fi is the best way to watch whatever you want from wherever you are.
Get AT&T Fiber with Wi-Fi and add some Wi-Fi square footage to your house. Limited availability in select areas. Go to att.com/hypergig to check eligibility. Coverage requires extenders at additional charge.
How does Echo make outdoor-grade outdoor power equipment? We start outside in the heat, the cold, the rain. We get hell, test it, best it, retest it. We make it tougher, more powerful, more reliable, more Echo. 200-plus tools forged by the elements, built for pros, tough pros, outdoor-grade pros. We make it gas-powered, battery-powered, professionally powered. Then we get back outside. We get back to work. That's Echo, and that's outdoor-grade. Echo, power on and on.
You're listening to Disturbed. Now, back to the horror.
Up next, we hear from Reddit user Robert812003, featuring voice work by Matt Bradford. And we hear the voice in the basement.
Last night I couldn't sleep at all, which is fairly normal since I work graveyard shifts and it's pretty much turned me into a night owl. So even on my day off, I'm usually up all night long. So I'm up in bed watching a rom-com, laughing and in a great mood. I decided I deserved to treat myself to the occasional drink. My bar is in the basement, which is fully finished and furnished. It's pretty much a man cave. I spent entire nights down there by myself or with the gang, and nothing strange has ever happened. So anything creepy or weird down there was absolutely the furthest thing from my mind. I finish laughing my butt off and I head down there. I go behind the bar, pour myself a drink, and head upstairs. But as I'm on the second to last step to the first floor, from behind me I hear, "Hey." Now, it was an older man's voice, in their 50s, I think. I know the house is empty except for me, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. I looked down there and nothing moved or spoke or came forward. I freaked the fuck out. I jutted up the last 2 steps and slammed the basement door closed. I'm wondering, did I imagine that? Is there someone in my house? And as I'm standing there panicking, I hear the same man's voice coming from down the basement but muffled by the door. The intonation, he asked a question and continued to talk right after. Talking to me, the question sounded something like, I couldn't make so much, especially what he said after that, but I was panicked, adrenaline pumping. I said, fuck this shit, someone broke into my house. Into the next room, like my handy-dandy baseball bat, and headed the heck back down there. Silence. Just silence. Slowly, I turned on every light in the room down there and prepared to bash some dude's head in. Every nook and corner checked, the basement is completely empty except for my panicky, heavily breathing ass. I noped the fuck out of there. I locked myself in and spent the next hour in crisis mode checking my basement cameras, which showed nothing and no one except for me pouring myself a drink. Then coming back down there and running around like a madman with a bat a minute later. Anyway, I went down to the basement this afternoon after I got up, with my trusty bat in hand, and I rechecked the whole place. I found nothing. No one. Just me questioning both my sanity and reality. Look, I know what I heard. That guy was pretty loud and he was talking in my direction and at me. Even through the door, I heard him talking down there at me up the stairs. It seemed like he was trying to have a conversation with me. Never had any kind of break-in. There's never been any kind of remotely strange experience down there in my 15 years here. Does this stuff happen to people out of the blue, or am I finally losing my ever-loving mind? So, quick update. It happened again at 1:50 a.m. At this point, I believe it was most likely paranormal, and I think I'm going to go down there tonight to repeat the same exact process at the same exact time, see what happens. My curiosity's gotten the better of me, and I want to know what he or it say. If it's actually an intruder, I'm coming prepared this time, but it should be very interesting. Okay, second update. I've been down here from 1:45 until 3 a.m. walking around, asking and looking, and nothing. Part of me feels like it needs the darkness, or even just that element of unpredictability in order to manifest. Maybe it needs a buildup of energy, which it discharged last night, so it's tapped out right now. No idea. Nothing to show for it tonight, but don't say that I didn't try. I'll try to keep you updated. I'll keep a keen eye on the basement, and if anything happens now, you'll absolutely hear from me.
Looking for even more Disturbed? Join us on Patreon for ad-free listening, shout-outs, and Disturbing Calls bonus episodes at patreon.com/disturbedpodcast. Apple users can subscribe to Disturbed Media Premium directly in the Apple Podcasts app.
And we close out the show with a submission from Diablo, featuring voice work by Tom Eglio, and we meet the living dead.
I don't normally listen to podcasts, but my wife insisted that I listen to one of your podcasts, and from there, I was hooked. Wife knows best. She also suggested for me to send a couple of my own paranormal experiences to share with you and the listeners. I hate writing at the best of times, but I finally have some time now to burn, so I thought, hey, why not? I was a bit hesitant to send this story, as I've previously told it to other people, and they just laughed and called bullshit. But until something like this happens to you, don't assume and pass other stories as bullshit. Context, I'm a 47-year-old male. I was born in Colombia, South America, but moved to Sydney, Australia in the mid-'80s. My family in Colombia come from a town called Tuna, Boyacá. There are a lot of natives that live there and are very spiritual. Growing up, I remember all the stories our elders used to tell us kids about their encounters with the unknown. They always told us not to mess with it, to have respect for it, and to be careful, as there are powers out there that are beyond our comprehension and some can do harm. Although most people in Colombia are Catholic or Christian, my family's not religious. We respect other people's beliefs. We cherish the sun, moon, stars, and respect Mother Nature, as did our ancestors. This particular experience happened in the early 90s. I was 16. By this time, I was already living in Western Sydney, still in high school. I was a teenager thinking shit would not touch me and was hanging out with some real jerks. I wish I could go back in time and kick my own ass. We were always looking to have fun and at times to explore places that most people would find creepy at night. This particular night, we decided to go to a cemetery just to have some drinks and tell bullshit stories to try to scare some of our other friends. But what we all ended up getting was the fright of our lives. There were 15 of us, half were girls, and it was a mixture of close friends and friends of friends, if that makes sense. We all traveled to the cemetery in 3 cars and went deep into the cemetery, away from the main road, just in case security or cops spotted us. We didn't want to get caught with the alcohol and some of the happy smoke some of us were having. We were all sitting in a clearing that was just on the side where we had all parked. We could see the graves and headstones around us. We were just having some beers and just being silly. I remember that night was very dark. There was no moon. It was hot, and the sound of crickets was very loud. After a few drinks and happy smokes, our fear/creepy factor was gone, so we all started to walk around the cemetery looking at graves and trying to scare each other. We didn't have any flashlights, and the only source of light we had was just our lighters. Some of us went on other directions to explore the surroundings, and as bad as it sounds, some of us were getting a bit frisky with our girlfriends to get my drift. Yeah, I know, how fucking disrespectful, and believe me, that is something I'm not proud of and wish I could take back, because I believe a lot of bad things that have happened to me since then was because of that. Karma is real. After about an hour, we all sort of met back at the clearing we all initially sat at. At this time, it started to sprinkle a bit, and it got unusually cold. I say this because it was summer, and summer in Australia gets hot. Out in the west of Sydney, where we live, temperatures get to 48 Celsius. That's 118.4 Fahrenheit, and during the night is not much better, as it was that night before going to the cemetery. By this point, some of us had had enough and wanted to leave so we could satisfy the munchies we had built up from the happy smokes, and wanted to get some hot dogs from the petrol station around the corner from the cemetery. It was about 2 a.m. Then one of the idiots that was not part of the close friend group said he was busting for the toilet. Of course, there were no open toilets, and to everyone's surprise and disgust, he decided to just relieve himself on top of one of the graves that had just been laid to rest, as the soil was high and fresh flowers were all around it. When I say relief, I mean urinate and defecate, and then proceed to clean himself with the flowers on the grave. Some of us could not believe what he did, and others were fucking laughing, which prompted this fucking idiot to start kicking some tombstones, causing them to fall and break, thinking it would make him look cool or some shit. At that moment, the feel of the place and the ambiance changed dramatically. Everything went silent. All the crickets stopped chirping, the light sprinkle turned to rain, and a thick fog was starting to build up. Then we heard what sounded like 2 pieces of concrete smashing against each other, and it was loud enough that all of us turned around at the same time and looked in the direction the sound came from. We thought it was that idiot doing more damage to the graves, but there among the fog and on top of one of the tombstones, we all saw a lit candle. Now, bear in mind, at this time it was raining. And through the night, we didn't see any candles, especially lit ones. One of the guys said, "Fuck off, no way." That must be one of those battery candles. The rain must have gotten into it, causing it to light up. We all looked at each other and brushed it off as that. His girlfriend then said, "You always said that if you saw something spooky, you wouldn't run away, but instead will go investigate further, so go on. Don't be a pussy and investigate, Inspector Gadget." The rest of us laughed and said, "Don't worry about it. Let's just go and get some food." It was starting to pour down, but no. He wanted to be a big man and prove to his girl that he wasn't spooked, so he walked up to the candle. This was about 30 meters from where we were all standing. When he got to it, he shouted, "Shit, guys, this is a real candle. How the fuck is it still alight with all this water?" You could hear the fear in his voice as he turned to face us. Then we all saw it. A misty figure formed with the surrounding fog in the shape of a human just behind the candle. It was huge, at least 7 to 8 feet tall. The figure then crouched and blew the candle off, and that is when all hell broke loose. It was like a mini tornado hit us. It was raining heavily. There was flying debris. The wind was so strong that we had difficulty walking against it or with it. And the sounds, it sounded like deep growling and gut-wrenching screaming coming from all places. We all jumped into the cars to get away, but none of the cars would fucking start. There were 3 cars and all of them were drained of their batteries. By this point, some of the guys jumped out of the cars and started to run towards the entrance of the cemetery. But they were met with even bigger debris and dozens of smaller figures standing in front of their path. It was as if whatever was out there wanted all of us to get back in the cars. I mean, there was no other way to go but to the cars. We all made sure the girls were in the cars and the rest of us split to 3s to push the cars towards the entrance. Whatever alcohol and other things we had in our systems had completely disappeared by now, and adrenaline and fear were running through our veins as we vigorously tried to get us and the fucking cars the hell out of there. As we were pushing the cars, we could all hear whispers around us saying, "Get out. Faster. Don't come back." It felt like an eternity pushing those cars, and we could finally see the lights of the main road from a distance. But those shadows were still all around us, and the debris were hitting us all over, to the point some of us were bleeding with cuts and scratches from the debris. All this time, the guys on the drum were trying to start the cars as we pushed to no avail. We could finally see the main entrance of the cemetery, and this gave us the extra strength to push harder. As we reached the main entrance past the arch with the name of the cemetery, it was as if nothing had happened. Nothing. I mean, everything stopped. There was no rain, no wind, no Mr. Fog, no noise, just the sound of us panting and wondering what the fuck had just happened. Yeah, I think one of the guys literally shit his pants, but he will not admit to it, but we all knew. Once we had gathered our breath, we all just sat there. No one was talking. We just sat there for a couple of minutes until I said, how the fuck are we going to get these cars home? And then to our freaking astonishment, they all started at once. No one turned the key or tried to start them. The 3 cars just turned on by themselves at the same fucking time. We all knew that was our cue to jump in and get the hell out of there as fast as we could. We drove to the closest house of one of our mates that was part of a close friend group and sat there in his front yard, just lying on the grass. And then we realized that everything was dry. It had not rained at all. In fact, there was no reported rain anywhere near. Our mate's house was literally 3 minutes drive from the cemetery, and our cars and clothes were dry. How could this be? As we all remember how drenched we were when it was raining, we were all in disbelief. And we even started to think we imagined the whole fucking thing, but no, it did happen. All 15 of us experienced the same thing, and some of the guys didn't even drink or smoke that night at all. We all went to our homes that night in a state of shock, to say the least. The next day, some of us met up and discussed what had happened. We all agreed not to tell anyone about it, as we had already talked about it with other people that were not there the night before, and they all thought we were lying. I did go back to the cemetery a week later, just me and my then-girlfriend. Not to do anything stupid, but to apologize for our behavior and pay respect to all the spirits that manifested themselves that night, and to all the other souls that rest in the cemetery. Promised to never dig or mess with the dead again, and laid fresh flowers on the graves that were disturbed. While we were there, we could feel something was looking at us. Not other people that were there, but something close to us that we couldn't see. As time went by, I lost contact with most of the guys that were present that night. Some of them got really messed up from the experience. Years later, we heard a couple of them were heavily into hardcore drugs, and one had committed suicide. The guy that urinated, defecated, and broke the tombstones, for his actions that night, we think he was haunted to the point of despair, and most ironically, he was laid to rest in that same cemetery. I only speak to 2 of the guys that were there on the night, as we remained close friends for the last 30 plus years. We all got married and have kids now, and when we get together, we all agree on one thing: to teach our children the respect they must have for the dead, that there's definitely something after death. We lived it, we saw it, we felt it. We'll always remember it. I know I do, as that night I got a nasty cut on my face that ended up needing 5 stitches. And that scar reminds me of that night every time I look in the mirror. And always I wish I had listened to my elders back to when I was a child. I know that since that night I somehow became more sensitive to the paranormal and have since experienced other events that question logic to its core. But those stories are for another time. Now, I just want to point out that whatever was out there in the cemetery did not portray like an evil presence as scary as it was. They just wanted us to get out of it. My feeling. What happened that night was definitely a warning. How the atmosphere of the cemetery changed the way it did that night. We'll never comprehend it. It was incredible. As real as it could get. I mean, what power it can change, make it rain, storm, make worse winds, just within the confinement of the cemetery. Just thinking about that whole night gives me the chills every time. So to all those people out there thinking that going to cemeteries at night to party and disrespect the dead is cool, think again, as the dead may be more alive than you think.
Follow our social channels on Facebook and Instagram at Disturbed Podcast and on Twitter at Disturbed_pod.
Thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/DTHS to get 10% off your first month of online therapy. If you enjoyed the show, please consider joining Plus at DisturbedPodcast.com/plus. But if you can't, consider leaving a positive rating and review on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at DisturbedPodcast.com. Music by Carl Casey at WhiteBatAudio&Co.ag. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to stay safe out there, y'all.
I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kawabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. My latest book, Kawabana Volume 12, is now out, collecting even more of your favorite stories from the show. You can find creepy ghosts, abandoned buildings, haunted shrines, fascinating monsters, and much, much more. You can find that on Amazon right now and help support the show at the same time. This week, we're looking at creepy tales taking place on both sides of the divide. Horrifying encounters with both the living and the dead. But now, a young boy and his family move into a building that's known to be haunted. But what's really going on there? And can they escape in time? Find out in Ghost Apartment. April 1975. On the first day of 6th grade, Menma transferred to our class. He was naturally friendly and great at making people laugh, so he quickly became our friend. July arrived, and the summer holidays were about to begin. I could barely pay attention in class, and all I could think about was how I was going to spend my time. Everybody else was doing the same. Why don't you come over to my house, Dave? Cicadas were chirping noisily outside the window as I was trying to put my swim shorts on over my pants. I was in the middle of figuring to get my pants off without accidentally flashing anyone. The next class was swimming lessons, and girls were running around behind a nearby curtain, screaming and laughing as they changed. Some of them didn't even seem to care if anyone saw them getting dressed. Of course, most of the boys pretended not to care, like, I don't care about girls, I'm a man's man, stuff like that, but they were still trying to sneak a peek. Yeah, sounds good. But where do you live? The apartment complex. We're currently building a house, but it's not finished yet. Menma's parents had moved here before their house was done, it seemed. It seemed they wanted him to start school first day so he could quickly make friends. He seemed more concerned with what was behind me, so I turned around and saw Higuchi-san had just taken her shirt off. I panicked and turned back to Menma. Which complex do you live in? 4th floor of Building 5. Oh, wow, the ghost apartments. At the time, the apartment complex area, there were nearly 40 buildings in total, was totally full. And yet, despite this, there was one building almost empty. Building 5. At night, one building alone was dark, while all the others were lit up brightly. This building was located in the corner of the area, and there was a gloomy shrine right in front of it, as well as a dirty river that went by next to it. Anyway, it seemed his parents were going back to where they previously lived to wrap up some work, so they wouldn't be home that day. That was why he asked us to come over. He didn't want to be home alone. It's really creepy there at night, he said, and I found myself getting excited. Would there really be ghosts? There had to be. Awesome! When I agreed to go over, Menma looked relieved. He started humming as he got changed. Seemed he was still looking at Higuchi. I didn't want to seem weak, so I did my best not to look at them. I actually had a weird experience at the ghost apartments before. 2 years prior, I was taking kendo lessons and there was a guy that I didn't like. Whenever we faced each other, he always hit me right in the face, despite the fact I was younger than him. I couldn't stand being paired with him all the time. I only found out that he lived in Building 5 when he and his family died in an unfortunate family pact. The surname on the news was the same one I'd seen written on his protective gear, and it was an incredibly rare name. Being a kid, however, my first thought was, yes, now he won't bully me anymore. I was only young, sure, but I was still a brat. At any rate, there were even books written by how people were visiting from all over the country just to their deaths from that particular building. That, according to Menma, the only strained himself a lot. Either way, I took my good friend Hunter with me and went the night at Member's place. As we pushed our bikes, I asked a few things. At first, there was nothing, he said, but I thought the apartment was kind of creepy. But the new house should be ready soon, so I thought I could put up with it for 3 months. Then, about a week ago, I started to get worked up. He really was scared. But with everyone focused on him and under the bright summer sun, maybe he no longer felt afraid. And so, he kept going. The other night, I suddenly woke up, right? I looked at the clock and it was after 1. I thought that it was a pretty strange time to wake up, so I closed my eyes. But then I heard a noise coming from the next room. Like something scratching the tatami mats or crawling across it. No way! Hunter screamed. That's terrifying, I replied, and we all laughed. Emma seemed kind of proud. Building 5. The apartment complex was rather far from my house, so this was only the second time I'd ever been there. It was kind of scary. The entirety of the 5th floor was covered in veneer or something, supposedly to stop people from jumping. At least, that's what Hunter, who lived nearby, said. There was no elevator or anything fancy like that. We had to take the dim, narrow stairs all the way up. We were only at the stairs and I was already scared. Before, we were laughing under the bright sun, but now I was already trembling. I mean, this was the famous ghost apartment that had been written about in books. Once again, the reality of the situation hit me in the face like a truck. I kept quiet and kept climbing. Like, this was where Menma lived, so I could hardly complain about how creepy it was as a visitor. I was his friend, after all. Here we are, Menma said, opening the door and letting us inside. The old rusty green door opened with a terrible noise. The apartment itself was uncomfortably dark and cramped. It had the same layout as Hunter's apartment, even though he lived in a different building, but his apartment felt much bigger and brighter. There were a few old chests and cupboards in the room. It seemed the furniture had been left behind by the previous occupants. And, being that they were moving into a new house soon anyway, they decided to use it rather than dragging all their stuff up to the 4th floor. I thought, almost nobody lived in this building. So, how many years ago did the previous tenants leave this apartment? Hey, do you have a cassette recorder or something? Hunter asked. No. I brought my camera because my radio cassette player would be too heavy to cart all the way over here. But let's record that crawling sound. Emma and I were impressed with how prepared he was. Awesome! What if we take a picture too? Amos, no way! Alright, well, let's take a photo together first. And so we did. Then we went around the room. First it was kind of creepy, but with the it was suddenly less so. We ate curry that meant, and then as we watched anime on TV, we discussed our plans. Then we read some and talked about girls we liked too. So, if you could touch a girl anywhere, would you choose the top or bottom? The bottom, of course, Hunter answered Memma's question immediately. After all, that was what made boys and girls different, and even though we were in elementary school, we were still interested in those differences. But Memma replied like we were too stupid to understand. You idiots. Girls don't have anything there. What's fun about that? It has to be the top. You know what I'm talking about, right? He was getting worked up, but what he said wasn't a lie. If I could go back now, I'd tell them something like, "That's not true,"
But we were just kids after all. Okay, then me too. Yeah, me too. Right? It's gotta be that. You're amazing, Memma. We were impressed with his knowledge on the matter. Well, at any rate, it was around midnight by the time someone said we should finally go to bed. The next day was a Saturday on that note. But even after we laid down, we couldn't sleep. Memma would suddenly fart, making us laugh, and it wasn't around until 1 a.m. that we finally started to doze off. It was quiet, and I figured everyone was either sleeping or listening to the sounds of insects coming in from the open window. But then suddenly, Memma and Hunda spoke at the same time. Hey, today did you see Higuchi's? Did you hear a noise just now? Huh? Memma swallowed the rest of his sentence and fell silent. I listened closer. There it was. A dragging sound. It was coming from the room next to us, and it was low to the ground. It was like something sliding across the tatami, just like Memma told us at school. Crap, I thought. It was almost like the three of us laughing together just moments before had been a lie. There really was a ghost. Holy crap. Let's open the doors. Hunda went over to the sliding doors and went to open them. I wanted to stop him. Why couldn't he just pretend we didn't hear anything and go back to sleep? But then he opened the doors. The sound was even louder than before. Crap, I can still hear it. Turn the lights on. The lights. Memma suddenly turned the bedroom lights on. He pulled the string in a panic, so the lights swung in the air above us. Light then reached the dark room the sound was coming from. On top of an old chest sat a doll casting a strange shadow. Again, that strange sound. Photo! Camera! Hey, isn't the sound coming this way? I quickly pressed the switch on the cassette recorder. Something's coming. It never tried to come before now. Why has it come? Well, because the doors were open. Up until this point, Memma had never opened the doors and simply hid under his blankets until it stopped. The sliding noise on the tatami mats continued. No, it was something crawling. The sound entered the bedroom and then slowly started going around us. Around and around and around. After a few laps, it stopped right behind Memma and fell silent. Three of us also fell silent and stared at him. The look on his face suggested he was about to pass out at any moment. It was like he wanted us to do something. I think we stood there like that for about 15 minutes. Then Memma finally spoke. Is there something behind me? I leaned around to see, but there was nothing. Suddenly Memma started to twist around. My back! My back! There's something on my back! He fell to the ground and started rolling around on the tatami mats. There's nothing there, Memma. Yeah, there's nothing there. Huh? He looked at us with tears in his eyes. There's nothing? Nothing. You're fine. Okay. He looked at us again. Come on, let's go to bed, Hunda said. Yeah, we should do that. The three of us lay in the corner of the room, still dumbfounded. Before we sleep. Ka-ching! Hunda took a photo of Memma and I. To remember tonight, he said. We laughed dryly to drive away our fears. But then, pop! The three of us screamed. The tape had reached its end, and it was the sound of the recording button popping up. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't want Honda up there any longer, so I asked Honda if he wanted now. But then I suddenly felt bad for Mem. His parents weren't coming back until that evening. Hey Memma, why don't you come to my place? Let's have breakfast together, I said, and relief washed over his. Honda took the photos and then left, saying he was going to get them developed. Several days then passed without incident. I was hanging out with Memma when Honda arrived with the developed photos. By this point, I was starting to think we had imagined the whole night. So, is there anything in the photos? I haven't looked yet. I thought we should do it together, but the lady at the store laughed and was like, "You have such a cute younger brother." She thought you were my younger brother.
Then distribute it everywhere, and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right on your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Most of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel like having options like video podcasts and polls let me be more creative with my content. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Planned Parenthood is a lifer. You're talking about affordable STI testing,
Prostate exams,
birth control,
cancer screening, sex education,
regular wellness exams. It's healthcare, and everybody deserves healthcare. Learn more at PlannedParenthood.org.
Some days you just wake up twice as hungry. So stopping by Racetrack for 2 fluffy, egg and cheese-stacked, sizzling, meat-packed, hot and freshly wrapped, mouth-watering breakfast sandwiches for only $5. Yeah, that tracks. Get your hands on 2 tasty breakfast sandwiches, $5. Available at Racetrack while supplies last. Store for details. Make tracks to Racetrack for whatever gets you going.
I'd always been an avid explorer. Being able to uncover history, as inconsequential as it may be, was the best feeling in the world. I had spent plenty of time exploring abandoned parks and buildings around my city. My house was on the skirts of town, bordering a massive forest. I went for hikes every while to clear my head. Usually I would choose a different path each time, until I found a small wooden cabin that had clearly been abandoned. The door was missing. The wood was rotting and it was overgrown. The first time I stumbled upon it, I was unprepared. Usually I carried a knife and some pepper spray with me when I explored this, just for my own protection. I didn't have any of it with me that day, though, so I hadn't planned on anything more than a short walk. Besides, I hate to admit it, but something about that cabin showed me. As soon as I laid eyes on it, my heart beat faster than it ever had before. My whole body was jittery, so I left. I went back home, tried to forget about it, but I didn't forget about it. The next few days, I couldn't focus on my work. I couldn't do anything. My mind was consumed with the thoughts of what could possibly be in there. Soon, the thoughts took over my sleep. At first, I dreamt about the cabin, but would wake up in a cold sweat before I could step inside. Then the thoughts progressed to the point where I was unable to sleep at all. Exactly a week after first discovering the cabin, I decided it was the day. I was going to finally see for myself what was hiding in there. With the knife and pepper spray safely tucked away in my belt, I set off on my journey, retracing my steps from 7 days before. My pulse rose higher and higher as I got close to the cabin. When I finally saw it again, it appeared exactly as it had on my previous visit. I walked in through the empty doorway. The floorboards made loud creaks with every step. The first room was completely empty. A huge glow shone through a door on my right that was hanging on by one hinge. My palms covered in sweat, I pushed the door aside. The source of the glow was a set of 5 identical candles sitting upright on the floor. A miracle this place hasn't burnt down, I thought to myself. One by one, I picked up the candles and blew them out. As I was about to put out the last one, some red on the wall caught my eye. I raised the candle near the wall, using the light to inspect further. Written on the wall, over and over again, was a name. Peter Sherrill, my name. The candle slipped through my fingers and fell onto the floor, but I no longer needed it. Even without the light, I could now clearly see my own name written in blood on every inch of this room's walls. I instinctively stomped out the fire on the floor, still processing what I had just seen. My whole body shook, as though there was an earthquake. My knees gave out, and I fell harder than I'd ever fallen before. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, repeating forever in my head. Tears fell from my eyes as I struggled to comprehend the meaning of this cabin. When I finally regained the strength to stand, I tried to walk out of the cabin, to leave it behind, to pretend this never happened. But something in my own head told me that, no, I had to stay. There was more to this place than just the writing. There was something else that I needed to see. Maybe it was my own instinct. Maybe it was some mysterious force that science can't explain. Whatever it was convincing enough that I turned around and went further into the house. At the back of the cabin, a staircase heading down. I didn't know where it led, but again, something in my own head told me to continue. So I did, further and further down. The staircase was now made entirely of stone and lit by torches on the walls. When I arrived at the bottom, I was met with laughter. A man stood ahead of me with his back turned. He had long hair that clearly hadn't been cared for in years, thin and decrepit. I stood frozen in place, even as every natural instinct in my mind was telling me to run. The man turned around. What I saw standing directly in front of me was my own face, my own body. The only difference was that he was clearly older by a few years, but his eyes, everything, he was absolutely unmistakable. I stood in place for what seemed to be an eternity. The sound of my heartbeat echoed through my entire body, drowning anything else. The ground felt uneven, and the basement began to spin around. My vision started to fade. It was only when I noticed the knife in his hand that my mind snapped out of its broken state, and my body allowed me to move. I had to act fast, so what were my options? I could have stayed put, but this person, or this thing that was imitating me, showed no signs of peaceful. I could have run, but what if he... With my mind clouded by panic, I could only think of one other viable choice. I took pepper spray from my belt and squirted it directly into his eyes. Into my eyes. I had half expected it to hurt myself as well, but it didn't. The older version of me covered his face and stumbled backwards. I had an opportunity and pounced, drawing my knife and piercing his chest. He almost immediately fell to the ground, limp. After taking his knife in my own, I ran back up the stairs, horrified by what I had just done. After contemplating my options, I decided I couldn't risk leaving the cabin. I had just committed a murder, even if there was no reasonable explanation for the existence of the person I had eliminated. I had to stay in hiding. A knot tightened in my stomach as I realized I would have to take care of the body, just to be safe. The cabin was secluded, but it was still too conspicuous if someone did find it. When night fell, I dragged the body all the way out of the cabin and into the woods, trying not to throw up. I went deeper into the woods, ensuring nobody would ever find it. I walked with the body of my older self for a couple of hours. As it turned out, there was one more surprise in store for me that night. I stopped in my tracks when I realized walking toward a seemingly endless series of deep holes in the ground. A shovel lay in front of my feet. I let go of the body as I went to investigate. I peered over the edge of one of the holes, my breath hastening as my new greatest fear showed up in front of my eyes. Another version of myself was lying dead. It was a gravesite. Running from one grave to another, it was repeatedly confirmed that this was a gravesite entirely populated by dead versions of myself. tossing the body in, I began my multiple-hour walk back to the cabin, back to my new home. That brings me to the present. I'm sitting in the middle of the cabin, typing this out on my phone, almost dead, as a for help. In the days following my discovery of the cat's secret, my mental state went from numbness to horrified understanding. I fear I may be stuck here until a younger me comes to take my place. Even worse, I fear that new versions of me are continuously cursed to fulfill this disgusting prophecy for all of eternity. Just yesterday, I returned to the room that had my name covering its walls, only to find one more piece of writing hidden amongst the names. The cabin must always have a resident. Today is my birthday. I'm spending my birthday with my father. Since I'm out of town on a business trip, I had to spend my birthday with my father alone. My father is a very relaxed person. He is calm and collected and enjoys time hunting. I decided that I wanted to go on a hunting trip. I only went with him once when I was little. He seemed pretty surprised, considering I spent much time at home building small wooden projects. It was going to be my first time hunting with a rifle, so my father had to get me prepared. My father took some time teaching me how to hold my rifle. It was really heavy on my arms. My body also fell with it as it fell into my arms. Considering that I am only 15 years old and never had any experience outside my home away from my crafts. He had a couple of rules that were pretty understanding, but the last one kind of shook me a bit. He told me, "If you ever hear me say your name, it isn't me." He said that in a joking tone, but I could tell he was being serious at the same time. He never called me by my name. He always told me, "Anyone can know your name, but not everyone can know your nickname." It was getting cooler outside, coming down to around 3 in the afternoon. Since my father lives out near some woods, it wasn't too far of a walk for us. He obviously saw me as tired, so he looked around for a point where we could relax and hunt in place. Over an hour has passed and nothing came around. My father told me I'm going to go take a walk around Dev, as his patience was coming to a stop. I decided I was going to stay. I felt secure and all of our stuff was here. Neither did I feel like carrying everything on my back again. I nodded as he headed into the forest, hearing all of the noises of the forest around me. I was understandably scared, knowing this is one of my first times in the forest. I heard twigs snap all around me, clutching my rifle as I was shaking sitting on this log. After a while of waiting around, I decided it was best to meet up with my father. Heading into the same direction as him, I was still a bit shaken. My rifle was the only thing keeping me from running away. Seeing my father a few more minutes following the same path, I slowly crept up on him and said, "Dad, are you all right?" He turned his head to me, looking a bit frightened, with lost color on his face. My father never gets scared like this, even when he told me about his past hunting experiences. I was asking what was wrong, and then we heard it. "Devin," I was hit with an immediate sense of danger. A wave of fear hit me that I've never felt before. I wanted to throw up in fear. My father grabbed his rifle and rested it on the rock. He whispered to me, "Can you see anything?" I calmed down and lifted my head up, trying to be as quiet as possible. I looked up, trying to let my eyes focus considering the circumstances. As my eyes started to focus, I saw a man, but not a man. His body was disfigured, not seeming to look like a normal human. I couldn't really seem to make out much more. We were about 40 to 50 yards out. My dad told me whatever that is, it isn't human. My father seemed like he was going to break down in fear, but he held his composure for me. "We need to leave now, Dev." He slowly lifted his rifle up and turned around, trying not to make a noise as we were going to head back. He couldn't catch his footing and slipped. The noise caught the creature's attention, who was still yelling my name, seeming more desperate and louder. I was watching it closely, still not being able to make out its face or anything. Squinting more and more, I saw it. It turned its face to me. My body was telling me to get out of there now, but I was frozen with fear. I waited for my father to go farther down, as heavier than me, so I can move faster and quieter than he can. It fled behind a tree out of my vision, which signaled us to run. I swung my body out of its frozen state. I said in a hurry, "Run!" My father left me in a full-on sprint, following behind him. My gun fell from me, and I know it was my only protection. I needed to stop to grab it. When I was looking up after grabbing my rifle, it was around 20 feet away from me and could make it out now. The figure was tall with very lengthy arms, with hind legs as a dog but much longer. It was a darkish brown color with its head shaped like a human, but it's not normal. The creature's face looked more human-like. It stared at me saying Devin over and over in a comforting tone. I tried to lift my rifle up and shoot, but it was faster. It flew its body at me, covering a heavy pace. I was standing 30 yards away. My father took a shot from afar, yelling at me to get out of there, pumped with adrenaline and fear. My body was in overdrive. I ran so fast it felt like I was slipping on ice, running past my father. After it felt like ages, I made it to the rest point. Too scared to know what happened to my father, I held the rest point, not knowing whether my father made it. As quick as worry and sadness started to fill my body, it was soon at ease when my father appeared only moments after me. He was limping, seeming to be having a tussle with whatever that creature was. We packed in a hurry, knowing it could return whenever it wanted. We were taking a fast pace back to our house. Not looking back, we breathed heavily, having our first near-death experience in the woods. My mom was home looking worried as we headed into the house. Because we had been gone for over 2 to 3 hours, it took us another 45 minutes to make it back home. My father and I headed back in. We both sighed as Mom was cooking dinner for the both of us. I heard the phone ring from the living room. It was pretty late at night, so my father told me to go check who it was as he walked into the bathroom to clean himself up. When I got to the phone, it was a voice message from over 15 minutes ago. Hi, Dev. Sorry I missed your birthday. My flight got delayed, and I won't return till tomorrow. I love you. I hope you get this message today since I know your dad wants to take you hunting all day. The caller ID was Mom. My body was frozen, scared even to move. As I slowly put the phone down, my mother's voice from behind me in a comforting tone, Devin, dinner is ready.
This podcast is brought to you by AT&T Fiber with All-Fi. Whether you're into watching horror movies from your basement, watching sports from your backyard, or watching trashy shows from inside your car that's parked all the way in the driveway so no one in your family touches you, AT&T Fiber with All-Fi is the best way to watch whatever you want from wherever you are.
Get AT&T Fiber with All-Fi and add some Wi-Fi square footage. Limited availability in select areas. Go to att.com/hypergig to check eligibility. Coverage requires extenders at additional charge.
Hey, I'm Travis Kelce, and I'm here to tell you that you can get every touchdown from every game on Sunday afternoons with NFL Red Zone from NFL Network, included in Sports Pack on DirecTV, so you'll never miss a big moment. Hey, we kind of shared a big moment learning about all this great football on DirecTV, didn't we? I know I'll never.
Stop compromising. Get DirecTV with or without a satellite when you visit directtv.com.
The high peaks of the Rockies always did look like a siren call to me. From my childhood bedroom window in Montana, I'd stare at those distant blue silhouettes, crafting tales of adventure. During a Sunday afternoon matinee, while engrossed in the movie Wild, my old dreams reignited. Reese Witherspoon's gritty journey on the Pacific Crest Trail spoke to the very depths of my wanderlust. As the end credits rolled and the theater lights came up, I decided then and there that I'd tread that same path all by myself. Weeks were spent buried in maps, trail logs, and weather charts. I transitioned my daily runs into long hikes, training my body for the upcoming journey. The local outdoor supply store became my second home. The young cashier, Mike, with Freckross's nose, knew me by name. Getting ready for a big adventure, ma'am? He'd ask each time I came in for yet another piece of equipment. California, the starting point of my adventure, greeted me with a dry warmth. The arid air, filled with the scent of wild sage, was nothing like the crisp mountain air I was accustomed to. At the start, the PCT sign faded, worn by the elements and the touch of countless hikers before me. I couldn't help but run my fingers over it, wondering about the stories of those who'd come before. On the morning of April 30th, I tightened the straps of my backpack, took a deep breath, and started my solo hike, my steps echoing my heart's fervent beat. The trail was both my challenge and my refuge. The first day was grueling. The desert, with its vast stretches of golden sand and sporadic shrubs, didn't offer much reprieve. Yet as the sun lowered in the sky, casting long, spindly shadows, The horizon transformed into a canvas of oranges, purples, and blues. By dusk, I'd covered 25 miles. My body ached, but my spirit soared. The days melded into one another, each sunrise heralding new terrains, encounters, and challenges. Sometimes the straight, arduous path. At other times, it meandered through the landscapes, playfully hiding behind rocks or dipping suddenly into valleys. But it wasn't all breathtaking views and mesmerizing sunsets. The desert had a dual nature. It was as perilous as it was beautiful. While lost in my thoughts one afternoon, a soft rattle pulled me back to reality. Just a few feet ahead, a rattlesnake sunned itself. Realizing how close I'd come to stepping on it sent chills down my spine. Nature's warning was clear. While she could be a comforting mother, she wouldn't think twice before revealing her fierce, wild side. As I set up camp each evening, the solitude began to sink in. It was just me, the vast open trail, and the stories it whispered through rustling leaves and distant animal calls. My dreams were now a reality and more challenging than I'd imagined. But with every mile, I felt more alive, more connected to the raw, untouched world around me. The trail tested my limits and gave me insights into its intricate secrets. It was a journey of self-discovery, understanding and finding my place in it. Kennedy Meadows, often hailed as a hiker's paradise, appeared before me as a patch of green amidst the starkness. Tired, dusty, and grateful for some semblance of civilization, I made my way there, feeling every bit like a cowboy returning from a cattle drive, seeking rest and refuge. The first thing that struck me about the meadows was the laughter. Other hikers, some lounging, others animatedly sharing stories, brought an unexpected yet welcome sense of camaraderie. We were all, in our own ways, explorers of the vast expanse that was the PCT. Different beginnings and reasons, but the same path had together. I met Dan, a middle-aged man with laugh lines crinkling around his eyes. Over shared cans of beans, he told me about how he was hiking the trail in memory of his late wife. They'd always planned on doing it together. Then there was Lucy, barely out of her teens, taking a gap year to figure things out. Every face and every story added layers to my journey. The few days I'd intended to spend became a blur of storytelling sessions, group meals, and stargazing. The skies at Kennedy Meadows were a thing of wonder. As night descended, the stars came alive, scattered across the inky black like a handful of diamonds, their brilliance reflected in the eyes of fellow dreamers below. As the days unfolded, though, that eerie feeling of being watched, which I'd managed to suppress amidst the company, started to crawl back. It was an itch between my shoulder blades, a constant sense of someone just out of sight. Maybe it was other hikers' tales of strange encounters or wildlife on the trail. Perhaps it was my own mind playing tricks. But at night, nestled in my tent, every rustle of the wind, every distant footstep seemed amplified. Lucy approached me on my last night as the campfire's flames dwindled and conversations lulled. Her usually vibrant eyes seemed shadowed. "You ever get the feeling," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling, "that you're not alone on this trail?" I swallowed, my earlier apprehensions suddenly validated. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I tell myself it's just the wild playing tricks on me." Lucy glanced around nervously. I thought so too, but last night, just outside my tent, I heard something, a voice, and not just any voice. It sounded like my mother. She looked away. But my mother's been gone for 5 years. The weight of her confession hung heavily between us. We both knew the wilderness could be deceiving, but this was something else. Promising to stay alert and to check in with each other when we could, we parted ways for the night. As I slipped into my tent, the unease was palpable. As lively and communal as they were, the meadows held secrets, whispered tales that perhaps weren't just tales after all. The morning sun brought a new resolve. I packed up, said my goodbyes, and returned to the trail. The vastness awaited, and so did its mysteries. While I was more determined than ever to conquer the PCT, I couldn't shake off the feeling that the trail, in its silent, watchful way, was slowly pulling me into its enigmatic embrace. The sweeping vistas of Yosemite felt like they'd been ripped right from the pages of a storybook. Towering granite cliffs gave way to lush meadows, and roaring waterfalls provided a musical backdrop to my every step, but even nature's majesty couldn't deter the unease in my bones. Each sunrise brought a fresh start, and the hope that the unsettling feelings from Kennedy Meadows would fade. But as the sun journeyed across the sky, the sensation of being watched grew more robust. The whispering wind seemed to carry murmurs, and the rustling leaves seemed to conceal whispers. On one of these sunlit mornings, while refilling my canteen from a stream, I first spotted the figure, a vague silhouette on a ridge, stark against the morning sky. Squinting, I tried to make out details, but it remained indistinct, like a smudged charcoal drawing. Shaking my head, I continued my hike, trying to chalk it up to fatigue or a trick of the light. But the sensation persisted. Glances over my shoulder, straining ears for footsteps, checking my tent zippers became habitual. One evening, while making my way towards a marked campsite, a sense of urgency propelled me forward. My trusty GPS showed the camp was just a short distance away. The promise of the company seemed like a beacon. Breaking through a thicket, I was met with a welcome sight. Tents of various sizes dotting the clearing and the gentle hum of fellow hikers sharing their day's experiences. Safety, I thought, was in numbers. Eagerly following the tent amongst the others, I shared a meal with a couple from Colorado. Their easygoing nature and the light-hearted conversation made the shadowed figure seem like a distant memory. But as night crept in, casting long, dancing shadows from the campfire, the sense of foreboding returned tenfold. Sometime around 11, at night, nestled in my sleeping bag, I jolted awake to a sound that sent chills down my spine. My name was being called out from the darkness in a voice I couldn't quite place, an eerily familiar voice, yet distorted, like a warped recording. Kim, Kim. For a moment I lay paralyzed, doubting my senses. But when it came again closer this time, terror gripped me. Who was it? What did they want? I remembered Lucy's words from Kennedy Meadows and shuddered. Was I, too, hearing the voices of long-lost loved ones? The night seemed to stretch endlessly, every sound amplified in the haunting silence. Morning couldn't come soon enough. The campsite stirred to life, with hikers preparing for another day on the trail. But I felt like a shell, the previous night's experience casting a long, cold shadow over my spirit. Sitting by the campfire remnants, Dan from Kennedy Meadows approached, concern evident in his gaze. Rough night? He inquired gently. I hesitated, then spilled the events of the night. To my surprise, Dan nodded slowly. You're not the first and won't be the last. This trail, as beautiful as it is, holds many mysteries. His words, while comforting, held a warning. Whatever was out there was very accurate, and it seemed it had its eyes set on me. The trail ahead seemed to stretch endlessly, its undulating path framed by the towering pines, and broken only by the odd outcropping of rocks. The sheer vastness of the PCT never ceased to amaze me, but it also held a sense of isolation that was both overwhelming and eerie. A misstep on a loose stone brought a sharp, searing pain to my ankle. I crumpled, a curse escaping my lips. Panic, immediate and pressing, welled up as I realized the gravity of the situation. Alone, miles from any town, and now with a potentially sprained ankle. After a moment of collected thought and testing, I realized it wasn't broken, but walking on would be a painful endeavor. A nearby campsite indicated on my GPS became my immediate target. Using my hiking stick as a crutch, I hobbled along, the pain a constant vulnerability. Setting up camp took longer than usual, but once inside my tent, the weariness of the situation settled in. An early dinner was followed by a deep, albeit uneasy, slumber. The darkness outside seemed oppressive when I was jolted awake. An unnatural silence had settled as if the forest was holding its breath. Then I heard it. The voice, more insistent this time. "Please help me, Kim," it pleaded, over and over in rapid succession, echoing in the stillness of the night. My blood turned cold. As familiar as it was strange, the voice seemed to be right outside my tent. Armed with only my flashlight and a steely resolve, I decided I had to know. I slowly began to unzip my tent, the sound deafening in the silence. Just as the flap opened, a chilling scream cut through the night. Heart racing, I shone the flashlight in its direction, and my breath caught. A figure, humanoid, but devoid of apparent features, stood at the edge of the campsite. Its silhouette was stark against the night sky. Challenging my fear, I shouted, "Who are you?" To my horror, it responded with my question, "Who are you?" Its tone was mock-marish echo. The figure began to circle my tent, its movements erratic. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my injury and the unsettling presence outside trapped me. Hours felt like days until finally, dawn began to break. The figure had vanished when the sun's first rays filtered through the trees. But a closer look around my campsite revealed a terrifying sight. Distinctly non-human footprints circled my tent. The raw reality of the night's events sunk in, leaving me trembling. Mustering all my strength, I packed up, using the daylight to my advantage. Each step was a painful reminder, but the distance myself from the site drove me forward. I was determined to reach the nearest town, to seek solace in civilization, and perhaps find an answer to the enigmatic presence that seemed determined to shadow my journey. The quaint town that nestled at the foot of the mountain range offered more than just a break from the wilderness. It promised safety. At least that's what I had hoped. My ankle, wrapped tightly, was healing, but the emotional scars of the last few days seemed rawer than ever. While recuperating, I dived into local legends and folklore, seeking explanations for the haunting events on the PCT. Nights were spent poring over old texts, and days were filled with conversations with locals, many of whom regarded me with pity and wariness. Two names repeatedly emerged from the shadows of these tales: skinwalkers and wendigos, creatures that could mimic voices, stalk silently, and instill sheer terror in their victims. Though I pride myself on being a skeptic, the stories hit too close to home. A local old Mrs. Thatcher whispered a chilling addition: "Taunts they've marked you, these beings truly let go." Regardless, after a week in town, and with a renewed determination, I made my way back to the trail. Canada was the goal, and I wasn't about to let legends or my fears deter me. The days blurred together, but an uneasiness persisted. It was as if the very air around me had grown dense. Every rustle, every distant sound seemed to whisper threats. But I pressed on, grit and resolve my constant companions. However, as the days turned to nights and the wilderness swallowed me whole, that nagging sensation of being watched and followed became undeniable. Camp, usually a source of comfort, seemed to cast more shadows than light, each dancing menacingly in my vision's periphery. Then one evening, as the fiery hues of sunset gave way to the creeping blues of the black, a voice returned. It wasn't outside my tent or off in the distance. It was right by my ear, intimate and terrifying. It breathed, a chilling parody of familiarity. Voice, in nylon, offering no protection from whatever lurked mere inches away. The night was agonizingly long. Every fiber remained alert, waiting for an attack that never came. By dawn, my nerves were frayed, exhaustion weighing down. The last stretch of the trail before reaching Canada was, ironically, one of the most beautiful. Dense forests opened up to sweeping views of pristine lakes, providing a tantalizing promise of the end. Yet, as I took those final steps, completing my long journey, the elation I had expected was overshadowed by dread. Standing there, marking the end of the PDT, was the silhouette that had haunted my journey. As the wind picked up, it seemed to dissolve into the breeze, but not before leaving behind a chilling message. "You may leave the trail, Kim," the voice echoed, "but the trail will never leave you." The vast Canadian wilderness stretched ahead, inviting and menacing all at once. I realized then that some journeys have no true end, and some shadows, no matter how fast you run, cling to you forever.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. The era of automotive advances with the all-electric Polestar 2, now with faster charging, improved EPA estimated range of up to 320 miles, and advanced safety technology. Experience awe-inspiring performance combined with luxury design as standard. The time is now. The all-electric Polestar 2. Test drive and order today at polestar.com.
Instacart helps you get beer and wine delivered in as fast as an hour. So, whether you need to fill the cooler for tailgate season, or Fill your glass for Pinot by the fire season. You can save time by getting fall sips delivered in just a few clicks. Visit Instacart.com app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Must be 21 or over for alcohol delivery where available. Instacart. Add life to cart.
I pulled my truck off the dirt road and into the dense woods of East Tennessee. The leaves crunched under the tire, maneuvered through the winding path, the forest towering on either side of me. It was a place of legends, of stories whispered around campfires and shared among locals. A place between fact and fiction was as thin as the air. I had spent most of my life dismissing stories, chalking them up to the overactive imaginations of people who spent too much time in the woods. Nothing had changed. The stories had taken root in my mind, growing like an obsession I couldn't. So here I was, a park ranger in this vast wilderness, fueled by curiosity and desire to uncover the truth behind the legends. My particular fascination was with the dog. A cryptid resembled a humanoid dog. I had read the accounts, heard the eyewitness testimonies, and seen the grainy photographs that were said to be evidence of its existence. The creature shouldn't exist. Defied the laws of nature and reason, yet the stories persisted. As I parked the truck and stepped out, the forest embraced me. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The sun filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. I should have felt at peace, surrounded by the beauty of nature, but a sense of unease gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. I adjusted the brim of my hat and shouldered my backpack, the weight of it a reassuring presence. The trails stretched out before like winding veins leading to the heart of the wilderness. I took a deep breath and began my hike, my footsteps blending with the rustling leaves and the distant chirping of birds. The wind whispered through the faintest hint of something otherworldly. It was as if the forest held its secrets close, revealing them only to those who dared to seek them. I walked for hours, steps, a comforting cadence. When the sun began its descent, I was in a secluded clearing. The light filtered through the ground with cold. I settled down on a fallen log, my thoughts drifting as I gazed at the beauty surrounding me. And then a sound cut through the stillness, a faint rustling, like the cautious footsteps of an unseen creature. My senses went on high alert, every muscle in my body tensing. I slowly stood up, my hand instinctively moving to the holster at my hip. The rustling grew louder and closer. I scanned the trees, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I saw it. A movement in the underbrush, a flash of fur and shadow. My breath caught as I caught a glimpse of something that shouldn't be there, and defied explanation. A creature emerged from the shadows, its form a grotesque blend of man and beast. Its eyes gleamed in the dim light, fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. It was like nothing I had ever seen, a creature from the realm of nightmares. Fear surged through me, a primal instinct that demanded flight, but I stood my ground, my fingers tightening around the grip of my gun. The creature recoiled from the light, emitting a low growl in my spine. I could feel its menace and otherness as if it existed on a plane separate from ours. Without thinking, I raised my gun and fired. The shot echoed through the woods, a loud sound that reverberated in my ears. The creature roared, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of hell itself. And then, it turned and fled, disappearing into forest darkness. I stood there, my heart racing, my ears ringing from the gunshot. The clearing was silent once more. The only evidence of the encounter was the faint smell of gunpowder in the air. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I lowered the gun. The legends had become a reality, the stories given form. I had come face to face with the unknown, the unimaginable. As the sun sank below the horizon, casting the woods into shadow, I knew that I had stepped into a world where the line between reality and myth was as thin as the mist that hung in the air. The distress call came in on a crisp autumn day, cutting through the forest's quiet like a sharp blade. The woman's voice trembled with worry and fear as she recounted the details of her family's disappearance. Husband, son, and brother-in-law, all gone during what should have been a routine fishing trip to Fontana Lake. I listened intently, my fingers tightening on the steering wheel of my truck as I jotted down their descriptions and the last known location. The woman's desperation was palpable, her words carrying the weight of a nightmare that had come to life. As a park ranger, it was my duty to respond and bring my training and experience to bear on such situations. But this was different. This was personal. The stories of the cryptids that haunted these woods had taken root in my mind, fueling an obsession that drove me to become a part of this wilderness. The Dogman, a creature that defied logic and reason, had become more than just a legend to me. It had become a challenge, a puzzle I was determined to solve. As I navigated the winding roads leading to Fontana Lake, I couldn't shake the unease that hung in the air. The forest surrounded me, a sea of towering trees and hidden secrets. The mist clung to the underbrush, obscuring the path ahead and lending an eerie quality to the landscape. I parked the truck near the lake's edge and stepped out, the chill of the air seeping through my jacket. The water lapped gently at the shore, a mirror of gray and blue that held its mysteries beneath the surface. I glanced around, my senses on high alert, as I prepared to embark on a search mission that could lead to answers, something far more sinister. I followed the clues and tracks left by the missing trio, my footsteps mingling with theirs as I ventured deeper into the wilderness. The forest seemed to close around me, the trees casting long shadows that whispered secrets in the darkness. The leaves rustled with anticipation, as if the woods held their breath, waiting for me to uncover the truth. I found signs of a struggle at the campsite, torn tents and drops of blood that painted a grim picture. A diary left behind by the missing hiker's son chronicled the events that had unfolded during the ill-fated trip. As I read the entries, a chill crept down my spine, a feeling that the line between reality and myth was again blurring. The diary's pages were filled with fear and desperation, the son's words conveying the terror of a family's encounter with a creature that defied belief. Curious sounds in the woods had escalated into terrifying encounters with a monstrous dogman-like being. The creature's eerie roars and relentless pursuit painted a portrait of a nightmare that refused to end. As I read, a sense of foreboding settled over me, the weight of the unknown pressing down my chest. The hiker's words were a chilling reminder that the legends were more than just stories. They were warnings, cautionary tales of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows stretching like grasping fingers. The forest grew darker, the rustling carrying whispers of something watching, waiting. I closed the diary with a sense of dread, a feeling that I was on the cusp of uncovering a terrifying and inexplicable truth. The night was settling in, the air growing colder as I returned to the truck. The woods felt different now, charged with an energy defying and dangerous. Cryptid that had once been the stuff of legends had become a tangible presence, a threat that I could no longer dismiss. As I drove back through the winding roads, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The woods seemed to close around me, their secrets hidden in the shadows. The stories of the Dogman had taken on a new significance, their warnings echoing in my mind as I navigated the darkness. As I approached the cabin where the hiker's family awaited news, I felt dread. The unknown entity that haunted their trip was no longer just a legend. It was a reality I had to face head-on. As I stepped out of the truck, the weight of that reality pressed down on me, a reminder that the line between fact and fiction was as thin as the mist in the air. I followed the trail deeper into the woods, each step filled with determination and apprehension. The clues I'd gathered had led me to the ominous Wolf Creek area, a place that seemed to hold secrets in every shadow. The forest canopy above cast cold sunlight on the ground, a mosaic of light and darkness that danced with my every movement. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew calmer, and I felt uneasy. The tension palpable, like a tight string ready to snap. Every rustle of leaves and a whisper of wind seemed to carry a hidden meaning, a warning that I was not alone in this place. The path ahead was uneven and littered with fallen leaves, making each step a careful negotiation. I moved silently, my senses on high alert, straining to catch any hint of movement or sound. The eerie quiet of the forest was broken only by the occasional chirp of a distant bird, or the rustle of a small animal in the underbrush. I rounded a bend in the trail and came upon a clearing, the remnants of a campsite scattered haphazardly across the ground. Torn tents flapped in the breeze, and drops of dried blood marked the earth like a gruesome trail of breadcrumbs. The scene painted a vivid picture of struggle and chaos, leaving no doubt that something terrible had happened here. I knelt to examine the ground, my fingers brushing over the leaves and dirt as I searched for more clues. The soil was disturbed, footprints marring its surface in a pattern that spoke of urgency and fear. I followed the tracks with a growing sense of trepidation, the realization sinking that the missing trio had encountered something far more sinister than a simple camping mishap. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows, stretching like the fingers of the unknown. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees leaning in as if to whisper their secrets. I stood up, my heart pounding, and a deep breath. There was no turning back. I was committed to following this trail to its end. No matter how harrowing that journey might become. A glint of metal caught my eye, and I moved on the forest. There, partially buried beneath a layer of leaves, was a diary. The pages worn and weathered from as I flipped through the entries, story of a tale of terror and survival in the face of the wrong. Curious sounds in the woods had escalated into bone-chilling encounters with a creature that defied explanation. The diary chronicled the family of the creature's relentless pursuit, capturing the fear and desperation that had become their constant companions. As I read, a shiver ran down my spine. I looked up to the surrounding woods with a renewed sense of caution. The creature the hiker's family had described was no mere legend. It was real and here in the shadows, colder, and the rustles, a reminder that danger was never far away. With the diary in hand, I followed the trail, the urgency going with each step. The woods had taken on another world quality, the fading light casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to reach out for me. The forest was alive with unseen eyes, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I pressed on, I could a gnawing sensation that I was entering a realm where reality and myth converged. The creature described in the diary was no longer a figment of imagination. It was a genuine threat, lurking in the darkness, waiting to reveal itself.
The man.
As I
The man.
the line between fact and fiction, the unknown, each step I took.
Yeah.
The distant call of leaves underfoot. The crisp reminder that nature's grip was unrelenting even in the face of the unknown. I followed the trail of clues more to the heart of the wilderness, my senses heightened and every nerve on edge. The signs of struggle grew more pronounced as I moved forward. Torn tents, scattered belongings, and the telltale drops of dried blood that marked the passage of something violent and predatory. I knelt by the bloodstains, a chill crawling my spine as I tried to piece together what had transpired in this desolate clearing. The scent of lingered in the air, a haunting reminder that danger was closer than I dared imagine. As I stood up, I was drawn to a piece of paper caught on a branch, its edges weathered and frayed. For the paper, unfolding it to a handwritten note, a letter of goodbye addressed to loved ones, and penned with a trembling hand. My heart sank as I read the words, each sentence a testament. They spoke of reckoning that defied the sent shivers down the spine of anyone who encountered it. The hiker's tale unfolded with each line, a harrowing account of strange sounds in the woods, escalating into terrifying encounters with a creature described as a nightmare given The words spoke haunting roars and the primal fear that gripped them as they fled through the forest, pursued by an entity that seemed more animal than human. As I read, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the precipice of and evil, a force long before my time and would persist long after I was gone. The woods held sense, and this creature was one of its darkest mysteries. I folded the letter and tucked it into a sad reminder of the lives this creature had disrupted and wrought. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows stretching across the forest floor. Time was slipping away, and I knew I had to continue my journey before darkness descended and the creature's reign of terror began anew. The thick canopy above obscured the path before me, and I moved forward with cautious steps. To close around me, the trees leaning in as if whispering their own tales of fear and survival. Their foot and every rustling leaf made my heart pounding. A constant reminder that danger could strike any moment. It grew calmer, and I felt uneasy as I ventured deeper into the woods. Each shadow held a hint of movement, each rustle of leaves a potential threat. I was no longer a mere observer, part of this landscape, a player in a game where the rules were different. As the light dimmed, I could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. The hiker's diary entries echoed in my mind. There were a picture of relentless pursuit and unending fear. I pressed on, my determination unwavering, my senses alert to every environment. The trail led me further into the forest heart, where the darkness seemed to converge, and the trees loomed like ancient sentinels guarding their secrets. I knew that I was closing in on the source of the hiker's terror, that soon I would come face to face with the creature that had haunted their nightmares. The flashlight cut through the darkness, casting a narrow beam of light that danced over the trees and underbrush. Every shadow seemed to twist and writhe, taking on a life of its own. The air was heavy with anticipation, the stillness broken only by the distant call of an owl. And then, in the distance, a sound, like a warning whispered by the very themselves. I tightened my grip on my flashlight and moved forward, guided by a mixture of determination and dread. The subsequent encounter with the creature was inevitable. The night had settled around me, the forest alive with a symphony of unseen creatures, the moonlight in scattered patches, casting eerie shadows on the floor. Every roll of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl seemed to amplify the tension in the navigated the unfamiliar terrain. The hiker's diary had guided me this far, where the creature's presence was most pronounced. The drops of blood were my breadcrumbs, marking a path of fear and desperation. The trail led me further into the woods, where the trees seemed to close around me like silent sentinels. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move. I gripped my flashlight and my gun, senses on high alert. The diary entries had grown increasingly ominous, the hikers working their growing terror. They described a creature that defied the laws of nature, a monstrous being that hunted with relentless determination. The woods themselves had become a prison, each step fraught with the possibility of encounter. I paused to catch my breath, my eye opened. The only sound was the rustling of leaves. The diary's words echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder that the creature's was a jumble of frantic sentences. The hiker's handwriting grew shakier as they recounted the narrow escape from the creature's clutches. It had been a battle of survival, a clash bitter and prey that had left its mark on both. The diary's pages were stained with blood, a testament to the violence that had unfolded. The hiker's words described the creature's roars, reverberating through the forest like a primal cry. It reminded me that I was not alone in these woods, the beast lurking in the shadows, waiting for its chance to strike. As I read on, the sense of dread grew. The hiker's entries had become more sporadic, their words a testament to their waning spoke of exhaustion and despair, of being driven to the brink of madness by the relentless pursuit of the creature. The forest had become a lap of fear, each step taken sedation. I down the trail, each foot echoing in the silence. The air was heavy with the unknown, the dark canvas for the creature's evil presence. My flashlight cut through the blackness, revealing the twisted underbrush and gnarled trees that seemed to hold their secrets. And then, a sound, a low growl that seemed to emanate from the depths of the woods. I froze as I scanned the darkness for movement. The rustling of leaves followed the growl, a chilling reminder that the creature was near. I raised my gun, my grip steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The creature was out there, waiting. I knew the encounter was inevitable, but the darkness held the promise of deadly confrontation. As I moved forward, every sense on high alert, I couldn't shake the feeling that the woods were alive with anticipation. The hiker's diary, face to face with the creature, did their nightmares. The forest seemed to close around me, the trees becoming a labyrinth of shadows and uncertainty. I moved forward cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a defiance. Calls grew louder and closer, and I felt the weight of the creature upon me with every step. I raised my flashlight, the light beam revealing the creature's monstrous form. It stood before me, a twisted hybrid of human and beast, eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. Its roars echoed through the forest, a primal challenge that sent shivers down my spine. I tightened my grip on the gun, my heart beating as the creature advanced. The moment I had been preparing for, the climax of a battle brewing in the depths of the woods. The air was charged with tension, the darkness alive with the promise of violence. I took a deep breath, my finger poised on the trigger. The creature's roars reverberated in my ears, drowned the sounds of the forest. And then, with a surge of determination, I squeezed the trigger, unleashing a barrage of gunfire that echoed. The creature staggered, its form flashes of my gun. It was a moment frozen in time, a clash of predator and prey, the woods in its balance. I fired shot after shot, bullet finding its mark, until finally, with a guttural roar, the creature fell to the ground. The forest fell silent. The gunfire echoes replaced by the rustling of leaves. I stood there, chest heaving, my gun still raised, I stared at the fallen creature. Its once now lay motionless, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for survival. As I approached the creature's lifeless mixture of triumph and sorrow, the battle was over. The darkness had been defeated, but the woods would forever bear the scars of its presence. I looked, the moonlight casting an ethereal glow over the forest that had been the backdrop of this harrowing journey. The woods held the source of my investigation. I couldn't help but wonder if more mystery, casting an eerie glow that danced on the mist, their faces etched with relief and grief. I stood in the doorway. The woman embraced her son, tears streaming down her face as she held him, and clapped me on the shoulder. Her son looked at me, his expression mixed with sorrow, and said, his voice choked with emotion, "You brought us closure, family." It was the darkest of times. As the family shared their memories and stories, I excused myself and stepped outside. The fog was even thicker. The landscape took a deep breath. The air cooled. The woods were silent. The forest in an unsettling stillness. The moon hung low in the pale light, barely of unease that I couldn't shake. I had taken care of the creeks, but as I stood on the net, I ended the nightmare. A rustling of leaves, my heart racing as I scanned the fog-shrouded light of its own. And then it was a silhouette through my veins, caught its eyes, casting another seemed to pierce the darkness. As I aimed and stood there, the silence was deafening. I squeaked night as the bullet was illuminated by the flash of gun. But then, to horror, it didn't fall. It simply straightened, its eyes glowing with an intensity that defied comprehension. A primal fear gripped me, realizing that I had underestimated the darkness in these woods. The creature took a step forward, its movements deliberate and unhurried. It was a dance of predator and prey, a deadly game that had just begun, fired repeatedly, each shot hitting its mark, but the creature unfazed, its eyes bore into mine, a chilling reminder that I was no longer the hunter, but the hunted. The gunshots punctuated the silence, the fog closing around us like a shroud. I turned and ran, my heart pounding as I plunged into the woods. The branches clawed at my skin, the underbrush a maze of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. Every rustle of leaves and every twig snap sent a shiver down my spine, a reminder that the creature was still out there, still hunting. My breath came in ragged gasps, my footsteps echoing in the darkness. The fog enveloped me. The world was reduced to shadows and uncertainty. I knew that I was no match for the creature, that its evil presence was unstoppable. I ran. I couldn't escape the feeling that the woods themselves were alive with its presence, that every rustle of leaves, every gust of wind was a taunt, a reminder that I was never truly alone. I stumbled through the underbrush, my heart pounding as I realized there was no escape. The creature was out there, fog, its eyes watching, its presence a constant threat. The way out. As I ran, a chilling thought gripped me, a realization that the creature was not simply a monster, but a manifestation of the primal fears that lurked within us all. It was a reminder that in the heart of the woods, in the depths of the unknown, there were forces beyond our understanding that could not be defeated. And then, with a bone-chilling howl, the creature emerged from the fog, its eyes glowing with a hunger that sent a shiver down my spine. It was a dance of predator and prey, a battle for survival that had only begun. As its form closed in on me, the darkness consumed everything, the echoes of my screams in its wake.
Planned Parenthood is a lifesaver. You're talking about affordable STI testing,
breast exams, birth control, cancer screening, sex education, regular wellness exams.
It's healthcare, and everybody deserves healthcare.
Learn more at PlannedParenthood.org.
The air was crisp, and the autumn leaves crunched under our feet as Sarah and I ventured into the dense wood behind our small town of Harrow's Edge. The day I had begun innocently enough, with me suggesting a walk motivated by the pleasure of nature. I had hoped to find a moment alone with Sarah, maybe steal a kiss. The thrill of possibility tingled in my chest, making me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. We laughed and talked, the forest sending us further from the familiar paths and into the wilderness. It was a connection, a moment of shared discovery I hadn't anticipated, but something I eagerly welcomed. As the shadows lengthened and the sun descended, we were lost. Panic set in like a rising tide. Our laughter died, replaced by worried glances and urgent whispers. Once a place of wonder and leading us further into uncertainty, barely perceptible, like the distant whisper of wind through the leaves. We our ears, looking around, seeing nothing. What was that? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, I replied, my heart pounding. We continued, our pace quickened, and the conversation stilled. The rustling followed us, growing more insistent and invisible. The forest seemed to close around us, the trees leaning in, gnarled branches like skeletal fingers reaching us. The fear grew, an unspoken dread that gnawed at our inner. We were not alone. Something was following us, something unseen, something hungry. We stumbled upon a clearing, our breaths ragged, our faces pale. But the silence was even more terrifying. It was the quiet of anticipation, the hush before a storm. What is it, Matt? Sarah's eyes were wide, her face pale. What's following us? I don't know, I admitted, my voice cracking. But we need to keep moving. The forest seemed to mock us, its path leading us in circles, the shadows growing, the temperature dropping. Our shared adventure had become a nightmare, and the terror was palpable. The rustling returned, closer now, more pronounced. It was not the sound of an animal. It was something else, something unnatural. A chill ran down my spine, and I knew in my bones that we were being hunted. We ran. The forest became a blur, our breaths ragged, pounding. The rustling followed us, relentless, closing in, a predator stalking its prey. Time lost meaning as we stumbled through the darkness, guided only by instinct and fear. The world narrowed to breath, the beat of our hearts, and the rustling that followed us, ever present, ever hungry. Finally, we stumbled upon an old cabin hidden deep within the forest, a relic of a forgotten time. Its windows were broken, its door hanging ajar, but it offered the promise of shelter. We rushed inside, barricading the door. Our bodies trembling, our minds numb. The cabin cold and dark, filled with the smell of decay, but it was a refuge from the horror that lurked outside. We huddled listening to the silence, waiting for the rustling to return, but it never did. Hours passed, subsiding, replaced by exhaustion. We were safe, for now, but the nightmare was far from over, for we were lost, trapped in a forest that had become a maze, hunted by something we could not see or understand. And as I looked into Sarah's eyes, I knew our journey had only begun. The forest had taken us, drawn us into its dark embrace, and it was not done with us yet. The kiss, the connection, the innocent adventure had turned into something else, something darker, something that would change us forever. The night wore on, every sound amplified by the silence, every creak of the old cabin. Sarah and I huddled together, our bodies racked with fear, our minds haunted by the unknown terror outside. Sleep was impossible. We were prisoners of our dread, trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Finally, as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the gloom, we ventured outside. The forest fell, its silence no longer a comfort but a threat. The rustling was gone, but the terror remained, a shadow hanging over us, a chill in our bones. We stumbled on, guided by some primal instinct, drawn deeper into the forest's dark heart. Our senses were heightened, our nerves frayed, every gust of wind a taunt. And then we thought it returned. This time it was different, more pronounced, more menacing. It was no longer just a sound. It was a presence, a dark force that lurked just beyond our sight, stalking us, toying with us. We ran, our terror fueling us, bodies propelled by pure fear. The forest became a maze, its paths twisted, its trees gnarled, its shadows alive. The rustling followed us, relentless, closing in, a predator playing with its prey. We were no longer lost. We were hunted. We stumbled upon a cliff, our way blocked, our escape cut off. The rustling was all around us, of terror, a symphony of horror. We were trapped, cornered, our fate sealed. And then, as the terror reached its peak, it revealed itself. Not a creature, not a beast, but a manifestation of the forest itself, a living nightmare born of the twisted trees and dark shadows. Its form was ever-changing, a swirling mass of branches, leaves, and darkness. Its eyes glowing with malevolence, its mouth a gaping maw of terror. It spoke, its voice a whisper, a rustle, a sound that chilled the soul. Its words were a riddle, a puzzle, a challenge. Lost you are. Lost you'll be unless you answer true to me. We were paralyzed, trapped in its gaze, our minds numb, our bodies frozen. The forest had become our tormentor, our judge, our executioner. It asked us questions, dark riddles that probed our deepest fears, our darkest secrets. It knew us, knew our desires, our regrets, our sins, teased us, tortured us with the truth. We answered, our voice trembling, our minds unraveling, the terror becoming a living thing, a force that consumed us, a darkness that swallowed us whole. Finally, it was satisfied, its hunger sated, its thirst quenched. It retreated, its form dissolving, its presence fading, leaving us broken, shattered, forever changed. We found our way back, guided by some unspoken force. Emerged from the forest, our bodies intact, scarred, our souls forever marked. We had faced the terror and survived the nightmare, but the forest had taken something from us. Something intangible, something